Welcome to a very special live edition of Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Wednesday, July 26th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Indiana game is in 38 days. The game against Michigan in 122 days. Big Ten Media Days start today. Unless you're watching live, in which case it's tomorrow, but this is always kind of confusing. That's okay. I'm Tom Orr. I think I said that already, but I'm in Indianapolis for Big Ten Media Days, joined by Marc Givler, Tony Gerdeman of BuckeyeHuddle.com. It is Big Ten Media Days. It is the unofficial start of the college football season, at least for us, at least in our minds, which is always a very exciting thing. Tony, I guess, is there something in particular there is some news swirling. We'll get to that in a little bit. There is some news swirling around some folks who are going to be attending Big Ten Media Days. Is there something you are particularly interested in just beyond the general hooray, college football, hooray?
Specifically, I'd like to know Ryan Day's thoughts on a possible 4-game suspension for Jim Harbaugh. I don't know that he will answer that, but aside from that, and if we're talking about Ryan Day, I would like to know, do you feel better now about your offensive line than you did leaving the spring when you didn't have Josh Simmons? How much does he make you, give you more confidence? And you're getting Jacob James back as well. I think for me, that's one of the first questions that he'll be asked, and that I'm interested to hear what he has to say.
Mark, you obviously, I think people think of you as someone who covers recruiting for us, and that's because you, cover recruiting for us, but also obviously are quite plugged in on team coverage as well. What are you most interested in this week? Is there someone, because I guess one thing news that broke while we were driving over earlier today, none of the Northwestern players who were scheduled to be here are going to be here. I think that's very understandable. I'm sure I would not want to answer questions about stuff that other people had done either. But, there's the Jim Harbaugh news that Tony referenced. There's plenty to talk about with Ohio State. What are you maybe most interested in hearing this week?
I was going to be very interested to hear what Northwestern was going to be doing this week, who was going to be made available, and now we kind of have that answer. So unfortunately, I don't think we're going to get too much out of Northwestern this week. But so that was one thing I was really hoping to get to the bottom of. But yeah, I think the Jim Harbaugh thing is kind of front and center now. Michigan's schedule isn't particularly challenging, but anytime your head coach is facing a 4-game suspension, I think that's an interesting component, especially with the NCAA, who, not showing a lot of teeth lately, and now they seem to have something that they don't like about Jim Harbaugh here. So shoes on the other foot. Yeah,
it does feel like this is. We do have a super chat from Jordan Kapler I want to get to in a minute, but it does feel like this is a little bit of. It's a little similar to the. Some of the stuff that's come down in the past where, Jim Tressel had to resign because of lying to the NCAA about something that I don't think would even technically be against NCAA rules anymore under the new world of NIL, and that was enough to get you fired. And yes, of course, it's the NCAA. Of course what they're talking about here is stupid because they're only able to prosecute the incredibly stupid, minute cases and punish anyone for them. But, I think Michigan fans who were super outraged about Jim Harbaugh lying to the NCAA, Jim Tressel lying to the NCAA,
different.
This is obviously very different because reasons. Yes, of course, it's the NCAA. It's all stupid. Of course it's stupid. It's the first 4 games is the report on Jim Harbaugh that hasn't been officially announced yet. But their first 4 games are against Nowhere State, nobody, nothing, and Rutgers. So it should not impact Michigan's ability to start the season 4-0. Jordan Kapler says, I think the entirety of the college football community thinks the 4-game suspension is ridiculous and should be given to Kevin Noon. Do you see Kevin Noon on this show? I don't. You will see Kevin Noon tomorrow probably if his suspension is lifted. If
the appeal comes through.
He's still appealing, yes. So we have a bunch of questions coming in right now from you guys. So I guess we might as well start answering questions. And the stream is struggling a little bit, which yes, we apologize. Hotel internet being what it is, we will do our very best. And if this really does kind of conk out, this will be available as the Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning episode on your podcast platform of choice. We'll drop it probably in the Buckeye Weekly feed just to give people an extra chance to see it in case they missed it in the Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning feed. We'll have it there if nowhere else. Okay, so let's start with some questions. Mika Hanna says, do we get Nigel Smith out of Northwestern? heard he might visit. Have any thoughts on that?
Nigel Glover?
Nigel Glover, yes, is visiting this weekend. Former Ohio State target. I thought they'd offer him when he was in high school. They never did. He committed to Northwestern, I think, earlier than Ohio State was hoping he would, and so that kind of was that, when that happened. But they typically don't bring in portal candidates if they're not ready to, if they're not feeling like they're going to take them. So this makes a lot of sense. They could use some linebacker depth, I think, especially if, again, how serious are they about the jack position? And if they are serious about that, I think you're going to be taking some linebackers away to kind of focus on that a little bit. So it makes sense to me. I really liked him coming out of high school.
Well, he was a tweener, kind of safety, moving to linebacker?
Yeah, I think there was some position stuff there, but I mean, he's a big kid, so I don't think it was a thing of like, well, I don't know that he's big enough to play linebacker. I just think it was more of a thing of him growing into the position, and for whatever reason, I think they wanted to see him a little more either at camp or going into the season, and he just didn't want to wait and committed to Northwestern. He was a high academic kid, so just never kind of fell the right way, I guess. But was a guy who I thought was kind of a 4-star kid. I think a lot of places had him a 4-star recruit.
Which year was he a recruit? Was that
23?
20
or 22 rather? No, 23.
23.
He's a freshman.
He's a
this
true
year.
freshman this year? Okay, yeah, that was the reason I'm asking is because we've talked about this in conjunction with Ohio State not getting Kingston Viliuamuasa, where they have 2 recruits in this class at linebacker, Peyton Pierce, Garrett Stover. They had Arvell Reese in the 2022 class, but they only took one guy last year. So you probably need another linebacker somewhere to kind of balance those numbers out. So as a 2022 kid, this may be more of a potentially a Josh Simmons situation where maybe he helps out this year, but this is potentially could be a more impactful addition for 2024.
Yeah, they have a really kind of a weird numbers balance right now at linebacker. They're either super young or they're veteran and they're going to be out of the program in the next year or so. So there's definitely a gap to fill there. They've missed on numbers a couple times over the past maybe 3 cycles. And this does give you some insurance, too, in the event that you can't find a third linebacker that you really like in this class, too. So it checks a couple different boxes. And like I said, I'd be all for it. But
especially if Arvell Reese ends up as a jack, which I think he is suited for.
Oh, he could. Again, if they're serious about that position, I really can't think of a better human being to create than Arvell Reese and kind of what he's able to do out in space. So, yeah, like I said, eventually if they're going to get serious about that position, you're going to be taking guys away from – you're not going to be taking people away from Larry Johnson to do that. You're going to be most likely taking people away from James Laurinaitis.
And I think they realized in 1 year they found out that it didn't work putting a defensive end there for them. Or at least that defensive end. We'll see. Mitchell Melton was playing defensive end before he got hurt, and then will continue to be that jack. But he came in obviously as a linebacker, and that just seems like the natural progression. C.J. Hicks getting some reps there. I don't think he stays there. I think he's there for a year and splitting time, doing that, and then next year, 2024, he's your starting will.
All right, Mika Hanna wants to know Mark's thoughts on Edric Houston, of course, the defensive end, 5-star out of Beaufort, Georgia, who is committing on August 22nd. And, I think everyone affiliated with Ohio State football that right now is a little skittish about any kind of pending commitments, and people who Ohio State recruiting folks and who Ohio State staffers have been feeling good-ish about recently. What are your thoughts on Edric Houston right now?
As weird as the last few weeks have been, I still feel really good about Ohio State. There's been a connection there with Larry Johnson for a really long time. There was maybe a point where he didn't visit for a little while, and things didn't line up necessarily with him being able to get up to Columbus earlier, but he made the official visit. They crushed it. He pretty much immediately scheduled his announcement date, pretty much immediely was in the driver. Ohio State was immediately in the driver's seat for him at that point, and I think they're going to get him. I think they've checked all the boxes. I think playing time's important. I think playing in a 4-man front is maybe the biggest thing for him. And if you look at like Georgia and Alabama, they're not going to be able to offer him the same type of role that Ohio State can offer him. And so I just think between that and him kind of sticking with that decision date that he had coming into the Ohio State visit, and just the buzz coming out of that, I think it's going to be hard to overcome what Ohio State's done here as we head into a period where not much can happen except for those last few days of July. So
well, even when Ohio State will do a three-man front, they will still have a 4-3 type defensive end on the field. So it's not like you have to be the 290-pound 3-4 defensive end or the 240-pound 3-4 outside linebacker. He can still be the 4-3 defensive end and be in a three-man front because you still have that jack messing around. And they will have three defensive ends on the field at times as well if you count the jack as one of those defensive ends.
He wants to rush the passer. He doesn't want to be a three-tech. For sure, he doesn't even. He wants to be a guy who wants to be a Chase Young. He wants to be a Joey Bosa, and Ohio State's affording him obviously that opportunity with their scheme. And so, I just, there's been a weird, almost not a weird, but just a very unique, I think, connection there with Larry Johnson that's helped as well. But we've seen that fall through for him a couple times as well recently. So I guess until it happens, until you survive the inevitable Georgia-Alabama pressure that's going to occur over the next month, you got to be a little bit, on edge about it if you're an Ohio State fan. But I have no reason for concern at this point.
Mello number 7 says, can you guys ask Hartline and Day if they're going to use more of a rotation during blowout games and if they'll keep the playbook open for those rotational players for development? Brian Hartline will not be here. Ryan Day will. We get Ryan Day and 3 players. No assistant coaches this week. We'll get probably Brian Hartline, I'm going to guess, the first week of camp-ish, something like that. Definitely something we're going to ask about, because that's something we've talked about last year, too, where you'd have C.J. Stroud in there, and then C.J. Stroud would go out because it was 38-7 or whatever the score was, and they would bring in Kyle McCord, and they'd stop running the offense because they didn't want to embarrass the other team. You didn't want to run up the score on the other team. And, I mean, all last year, you go back and listen to some of those shows, you'll hear me talking about the fact that, hey, it feels like if you're trying to prepare this guy, because you don't know, you're one snap away from getting thrown in and being the starter in the college football playoff or the Michigan game or the Big Ten championship game, whatever it is. You got to kind of have those guys prepared. It also helps prepare you for next year when Kyle McCord is potentially in line to be the starter this year. So it feels like, to me, that's one of those things where, you don't want to run it up. You don't want to make, you don't want to really show up the opponent or whatever. But also, if you've got your backups in there, you're already kind of taking your foot off the gas. Your primary job is not to make everyone else's feelings be good. It's to get your team ready to play and to win in the future and in the present.
It's interesting because I've been doing this series of ranking the Ohio State top 10 playmakers on offense. And I need to go back and count how many times C.J. Stroud was responsible for a touchdown pass that put Ohio State into the 50s. We're up by more than 5 touchdowns because it felt like quite a few. They're still throwing the ball around with their starters. So you could do that with, I think we all agree they could pull C.J. Stroud or pull the starters a series or 2 before they have. And I don't know if I've said it on this show, but I go back to the way the offense kind of collapsed once Marvin Harrison went down. Would that have happened if Jaden Ballard had played more during the season, or and the 2022 receiver class, I think, disappointed in terms of how ready they were. But if they would have played more, could they have overcome that better than they did once Marvin Harrison went out?
All right, we're going to do this one as a very quick 1, 2, 3 down the line. Joseph Watkins asked, gun to your head, who is taking snaps under center week 1?
Kyle McCord.
I also say Kyle McCord. Mark?
Oh, it's going to be McCord.
Yeah, it feels like there was someone just put out a line on who was the favorite, and Kyle McCord was a heavy betting favorite.
I think it was minus 500, and Devin Brown was plus 300.
Yeah, so it's, if you're a minus 500 favorite, that's the equivalent of being, what is that, a 17-point favorite, something like that. I mean, it's, Kyle McCord's favored by 2.5 touchdowns, give or take, against Devin Brown.
I don't think that's how it works.
Yeah, it's not exactly, but yeah, it is. I would be very surprised at this point. Devin Brown, I think, has made it a competition, but you haven't seen anything to put Devin Brown clearly ahead of Kyle McCord. And with McCord having had another year in the system, you're probably going to lean towards him because putting in Brown could be McCord heading out the door. Putting in putting in McCord doesn't necessarily chase Brown out the door that way, because he could be gone in a year and then off to be an NFL draft pick, and then it's Devin Brown's time.
I'd say ask again in 3 weeks.
Yeah. Yakov wants to know, please tell me that Kevin is not off seeing Barbie. I will tell you that Kevin is not off seeing Oppenheimer. I can definitely say that. Jordan Kapler wants to know, what order should I watch Barbie and Oppenheimer in? I have not seen either one. I would see Oppenheimer first, because that seems like it's probably a better movie.
Well, people are raving about Barbie. I would say just depends. Do you want the palate cleanser, and which would be Oppenheimer then Barbie, or do you want to be like a little bit of happiness before getting totally depressed and sitting through 3 hours of building an atomic bomb? Just whatever your preference. I don't know if you are, like a serial killer type. Maybe you do Barbie first and then Oppenheimer.
So we know which one Kevin's doing. Wingman Ted wants to know, can you make sure it's asked if Heartline is going to be up in the box? Last I heard, it's undecided, unless you already know that answer. I don't think we've heard an answer on that.
They don't really tell us that until because we ask during we'll ask during fall camp, probably ask tomorrow, and it's like, well, we'll talk about it. We haven't talked about it yet, but we got some ideas. We got some things we're thinking about, and that is interesting though, because he has always been an on-field player, but I don't think you can have Ryan Day and your play caller down there, because Kevin Wilson was always up in the box, and he was awesome for that. So they need those eyes up in the box. And does that mean Keenan Bailey is with the tight ends and receivers? Which I don't think you need to spend all the time with the tight ends. No offense to the tight ends, but Kevin Wilson was up in the box.
Yeah. Mika Hanna wants to know, Mark, can Ohio State flip Kingston Viliamuasa back from Notre Dame?
What version of the Bible?
Yeah. Do I need to go ask? Check the drawer and ask the Gideons.
I don't know how he walks back his thought process when he openly admits he wasn't going to Notre Dame, which meant he was going to Ohio State because he wanted to go to USC. And he had this spiritual experience. How do you walk that back a month or two later?
It would have to be another spiritual.
Yeah, he's got to have another intervention or something. That's one I would, as mildly surprised as I am that they didn't land him, I would probably write that one off. I think Marquise Lightfoot is someone they could flip down the road. I think, first of all, you have the Miami factor, so how are they going to look this fall?
We know the answer to that.
How will the check clear?
We don't exactly know what that program's going to look like in 6 months. I also know that there are people in Lightfoot's camp who would prefer Ohio State. Now, they're not going to force him at the last minute to change that, or he would have committed to Ohio State already if that was going to be the deciding factor. But there are people in his camp who would prefer Ohio State. I think both due to geography and, of course, due to kind of what they've shown on the field, Larry Johnson's development. But does 5 months of that kind of wearing on Marquise and Larry Johnson continuing to pursue him change things? I think there's a chance.
Well, and let's see what Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau do. If they come out and just dominate and they're gone, that's something that would entice somebody. The Kingston Viliamuasa thing, in your time covering recruiting, can you tell us a similar or another, that's just an odd story? Was the Sharif Floyd going to Florida thing with Urban Meyer saying I had a dream about you or something like that? Or
yeah, Sharif Floyd claimed he had there was a whole Urban Meyer conversation about having a dream about Sharif, I guess, dominating in a Gators uniform. There's been some strange ones. Jaden Woodby. Being committed forever, and then at the very last minute being like, Florida State was my dream school the whole time.
Didn't he tweet out boy, I wish Florida State would offer me or something like that?
Yeah, just so that one was kind of weird. There's been so many. Johnny Dixon was an interesting one. His mom was, Zach Smith had actually done a really good job on that, getting Johnny very interested in Ohio State, and but mom was not on board and was going to kind of force that one to Miami, and Urban went down for the in-home, and must have had a dream about Johnny or something. I don't know, but that changed Mom's mind because she was pretty hell bent that he was not going to Ohio State. He was going to Miami, and so that kind of made a big impact late in the process. That was a later decision. So there's been some strange ones.
Us old schoolers remember Darrell Price.
Oh yeah, Darrell Price, 90. What, 6, 7, something like that, and he's out of Southern California, fullback, and faxed in his letter of intent to Ohio State from like a convenience store in Southern California, whatever the corner store was, and the person faxed in the signature page upside down, so you couldn't see the signature. And he viewed that as a sign that this was not meant to be and signed with UCLA instead. And as a result, Ohio State had room in their class for another Southern California player, linebacker by the name of Niall Diggs. So that worked out okay for Ohio State. So you never know. Sometimes, sometimes when God closes a door, he opens a window. So
when he faxes something wrong, he faxes something right.
Yes. So from Jim Saxa wants to know, will the Buckeyes beat Notre Dame? I mean, I think the sort of default answer is they're favored by a touchdown, give or take, something like that right now.
8.5 is
yeah, something like that. And I think you have to sort of look at it and say, until you can tell me that Notre Dame has significantly improved their skill position talent, I don't know that I feel like Notre Dame has the horses to keep up with Ohio State. I mean, they've got Ohio State's offensive line is going to be a question mark as long as it's a question mark, and it's going to it's still a question mark right now, but you have seen Notre Dame go up against the top teams in the sport over the last few years, and every time they play Georgia or an Alabama or an Ohio State or an LSU, it always kind of looks the same.
Well, I would say except for last year against Ohio State, but that was a season opener. And Ohio State has not looked outstanding in season openers. The year before struggled against Minnesota, lost the next week or so to Oregon, but I feel like the fourth game of the season is what gives me confidence that Ohio State is going to handle them. And to handle them, they'll win. Now, Kevin, on the drive over, couldn't talk enough. And by the way, Kevin is watching, so say hello to Kevin. He was bullish on the Buckeyes, just 3 or 4 touchdowns, I think he said, is what they would beat Notre Dame by. So
there you go. So let's see. Just scrolling through some questions here. Yes, it's just me. Tim79 says, "Are you in a hotel room?" Answer: yes. We are here for Big Ten Media Days. We are in lovely Indianapolis, and at the mercy of hotel internet. So if it is a lousy stream, we apologize for that. Super chat from Charlie: will Ohio State ever get new uniforms? I hate how the jerseys look just like Nebraska, Rutgers, etc. How do things like that even happen? If it's me and I get to redesign Ohio State's uniforms, I'm taking the ones they wear during the playoffs, which, do you know why they wear them during the playoffs? It's because they're the ones that look the best, and the ones that look the coolest, and the ones that then they sell a whole bunch of them because people want to buy them because they look better than normal uniforms. So, yeah, I assume, I have basically ever since Urban Meyer got there, assumed they're going to bring back the gray shoulder stripes they had in the 90s, and they're not going to completely overhaul them because it's Ohio State and you want them to look like Ohio State uniforms. But boy, it feels like that's overdue for that change to become a permanent one.
Do you have any thoughts, Mark? Do you have any preferences?
I'm really jazzed up about these all grays.
Do you like them?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's going to be a nice little wrinkle that stays relatively true to the school's colors and the general concept of Ohio State's uniforms historically. I don't think it's too.
What I really like about them is I'm going to be able to see those numbers really easy from the press box. I hate the black jerseys because you can't tell what is an 8, what is a 9, what is a 0, what is a 2, what is a 3. It's terrible, but these should be okay.
Looks fine on TV though, Tony.
I'm not watching the TV. I can't see it up.
Looks fine on my TV.
They do look. I think several people have made this comp, but they look like those Jimmy Jackson era basketball uniforms.
And
that's good. That's not a bad thing.
I like the basketball team to get back to that kind of look, and they do sometimes. I know.
I was down at Miami University this week for a kids camp that I had to drop my daughter off at, and they went to their bagel place downtown, and they have a bagel called the Randy Ayers.
Oh, wow.
And because he, I guess, was the coach there before Ohio State. And, this is a place that looks like it has not changed its menu much in the last 30-something years, so a Randy Ayers bagel would be good. I thought about getting it, but I thought, this is probably going to start great, and then by the time I'm done, it's breaking into my car. So
thank you for doing the joke that I was going to do. I appreciate that. I would never say that.
We've done these shows often enough that I think we're kind of...
I was even going to cut you off because he's going to take the joke.
We are literally finishing each other's sandwiches. This is great. Let's see. We're going to... okay, Mika Hanna wants to know, what about Dylan Stewart? Now that we've talked about Edric Houston, Mellow number 7 says Dylan Stewart just posted a South Carolina video. Aaron Scott has posted a lot of Michigan stuff and Oregon stuff. How much stock do you put into Fill in the Blank has just posted a Fill in the Blank video?
I don't put any stock into that. But with that being said, I've just, and again, reserve the right to be wrong here, and certainly will be happy if I am, and everyone can kind of tell me I was wrong, and that's great. Everyone will be happy if I'm wrong, but I've never felt great about Dylan Stewart in Ohio State.
Yeah, and
it's just a weird group of finalists, and I try not to put too much into that. And I know Georgia's in there, but this is essentially South Carolina, Ohio State, and Miami. And just to be thinking that long about Ohio State or South Carolina and Miami, it just...
One of these things is not like the other.
Yeah,
so why is that one there? That's what I've always thought.
And is it NIL? Possibly. I tend to think not. I don't think Ohio State's in nearly as bad of a situation in NIL as people think. In fact, here's a prediction. If KJ Bolden goes to Ohio State, just wait for the Georgia narrative to be NIL. Yes. I'm telling you right now, it's going to be the narrative if KJ Bolden goes to Ohio State. I know that is, because they're already complaining about it privately. But I don't know if it's immediately. I mean, certainly he could walk on to South Carolina or Miami's campus and probably start, and maybe that's not... it's not going to be the case at Ohio State. I don't think even with losing Sawyer and Tuimoloau, if that happens, I think Kenyatta Jackson's going to be one of the breakout players of the year for Ohio State. So I don't know. I can't exactly put my finger on it. I just know that I don't have the optimism that Ohio State has had, or that maybe some other people in this business have had. And I think South Carolina, I would give South Carolina a slight edge right now.
It's just so bizarre because he's a DC kid, that area, and why South Carolina? And so there has to be a significant why.
Yeah, and they got Nicholas Harbor out of that area last year. The track athlete.
I heard he's a receiver.
Yeah, he's all kind. He's everything. But so they've done okay there. They got Marshawn Lloyd out of there not too long ago, out of DeMatha, out of the DMV. So they've done well in the DMV over the years. But it's just it's a strange group of finalists for me for a kid who, and this isn't like a sleeper out of Florida that you get like a Santonio Holmes or something like that, where it's like, yeah, it's you and like a couple of mid-tier schools because you fat. But I mean, this is one of the top. It's like a consensus top 10 player in the country. It's a bizarre list to me, but.
All right, it's just me. Tim79 says, how can we watch the media days if we don't care to pay for Big Ten Network? We will be streaming a bunch of stuff, and this is all, much as tonight's live stream is contingent on hotel Wi-Fi, this week's live streams will be contingent on Lucas Oil Stadium Wi-Fi, which is sometimes fine, and sometimes we give it to you later. We will have the full Ryan Day interview, the full Ryan Day podium, all the Ohio State players, all the Michigan players, Jim Harbaugh, James Franklin, all the Penn State players, all that stuff. We're going to have all that on YouTube for you. Some of that may end up being a little later, depending on Wi-Fi. We will do our very best to stream as much as we can, but
I don't believe we can stream the first session.
The morning.
So you won't see that.
The morning podium stuff we can record but not stream. Everything in the afternoon, which will be, you get like 45 minutes with head coaches.
It's
and
much
players,
better.
Which is, you get much better
conversational.
questions. Yes. That's in some ways the best interview setting we get all year in a lot of cases. So yeah, that will all be, you can find it all at youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle, and we'll have some of the other players, other schools. You want to watch Brett Bielema's press conference, whatever. We'll also have that at youtube.com/CFB Playbook. So make sure you're subscribed to both of those channels and you get notified when we put all that stuff up. But we are planning on putting up hours and hours and hours and hours of videos. I mean, 20 hours of video or something like that this week at least. So, and we'll, this is all a little by the seat of our pants, but we'll probably end up doing some live stuff tomorrow, either from the field or from here, wherever. So make sure you're subscribed to all of our channels to find all that kind of stuff.
Based on this Wi-Fi, probably from the field.
Yeah, hopefully. Last year's Wi-Fi at the stadium was not fantastic, but hopefully they've improved that.
Although we've actually done lives from outside of the stadium.
Yes.
Before.
So yeah, we'll figure it out. We don't generally keep you guys waiting. So
well, it's going to be in the 90s, so I don't want to be outside tomorrow.
All right, we'll see. We'll see what we can get Tony to agree to do. He's so talent, and believe me, that is just an industry term in this case. Wingman Ted wants to know
if Kevin comes back here and says Barbie is awesome, I might go see that then instead.
Wingman Ted wants to know, what are your thoughts on the fans being allowed to come to quote unquote practice? Do you think it'll actually be practice or more like the student appreciation stunts?
It's not going to be like that because this is important. Like these are camp practices. However, camp, no pads, no maybe helmets, but like there's going to be no contact, and it's going to be pretty basic. So what you're going to see is, you get a chance to watch them jog around. You'll get to see them throw the ball around. There may be some one-on-ones at this point in terms of like throwing the ball because it is still pretty advanced because they've done their 15 spring practices, but nothing physical. You'll get to see, count the reps of, Kyle McCord took 55% of the reps, Devin Brown took 40, and, Tristan Jebbia. And you'll get a chance to see Lincoln Keenholz, like the freshmen that you didn't get to see in the spring are going to be there. So there'll be that sort of thing. I just personally worry about people getting in my way. I'm trying to watch practice here. I'm trying to do a job.
It's just me. Tim wants to know, what if Ryan Day still calls the plays, but Brian Hartline can veto it? That does not seem like a particularly likely scenario.
I think that's going to be. I think it's going to be the other way around.
Yeah.
I think Brian Hartline is going to call the plays, but when it's 3rd and 8 late in a tie game, I think Ryan's going to get his 2 cents in.
Jeff Lasajewski says, are you comfortable with Carson Hinsman at center? And I think a much more interesting question to me is, gun to Ryan Day's head, is Ryan Day comfortable with Carson Hinsman at center?
Well, and that's what I keep saying is I felt really good talking to Carson Hinsman in the spring. Like he said everything you wanted him to say. He reminded me of Luke Whippler, just the confidence and the understanding, how eager he was. But as I go back and have said several times, I wonder if we weren't focused or concerned enough about center because of the concern at right tackle. That was the big thing. And even some concern at left tackle. Like the situation at right tackle overtook everything. And we're like, what you had at center was Carson Hinsman, a redshirt freshman, and Victor Cutler, who has played center, but not for a couple of years and was a left tackle at Louisiana Monroe, was okay. And these are your two options. Or, Jacob James was injured. He's a guy that going into his 4th year now has almost never played. So the amount of his, the number of snaps at center, I would imagine Matt Jones probably owns the most, and he doesn't have many. So I do think it is a concern. However, if Carson Hinsman comes in and balls out, you've got a redshirt freshman who is a very talented guy. Next year it is not a concern, and then as long as he doesn't upset and surprise everybody by leaving pro as a redshirt sophomore like Luke Whippler did, this could be a blessing.
And I do think if they really truly do not feel like Carson Hinsman can hack it at center, or Jacob James can hack it at center, or Vic Cutler can hack it at center, I think they can turn to Matt Jones and say, look, we know you want to play guard. For the best, the betterment of the team, our best option is to kick you over to center and have Enoch Vamahi play right guard. I think Enoch Vamahi is certainly capable of playing a solid, he doesn't have to be first team All-American, but he can be a very solid right guard. So if they aren't doing that, then that kind of tells you, okay, they're feeling pretty good about Hinsman. That's going to just be one of those things that, when we're talking about what are you watching during fall camp, where is Matt Jones? Is Matt Jones, are they moving a bunch of guys around at center and Matt Jones is not one of them, or are they moving guys around at center and Matt Jones is one of them? Because that's going to tell me more than any question you could ask them, that's going to tell me what they really think.
And if Matt Jones is there on day one, you've got your answer wholeheartedly.
Absolutely. So Mika Hanna wants to know, how is Mitchell Melton and Jacob James? As far as we're aware, both are still on track to be back on the field and good to go day one. We can certainly ask about that on Wednesday, but as of right now, there's no indication those guys are not okay. Terry Slusher wants to know, is there a list of uncommitted recruits that might be at the barbecue this weekend, the big Ohio State recruiting event this weekend? Do you happen to know that list off the top of your head?
Not off the top of my head, but we have it on the board.
Yeah.
It's like 20 deep, I think, at this point. So we have it on the message board.
There were a lot. Tony's going to try and pull it up.
Luka Gilbert's a big one, just jumped in, the 2025 tight end from Lakota West. He's one of the headliners, I would say. I know it's kind of offense heavy right now. I know there's some concern about that on the board. There's a little concern about that on the board. Where are the defensive guys? But
They're Miami.
We'll see. What the final product looks like here in a few days.
All right.
Yeah.
But
Jackson Wiley, 2025 wide receiver, son of former Ohio State great Michael Wiley. He's out of Olentangy, north of Columbus. Does not have an offer yet, but has certainly been. He was impressive at camp, and it's just a matter of, are you a really, really, really good wide receiver, or are you a Brian Hartline caliber wide receiver, which is a whole other level above that. Offensive lineman Carter Lowe out of the Toledo area, probably their top offensive line target, at least that they're really solidly in on right now for the 2025 class. Offensive lineman Matty Augustine, Aiden Buchanan, defensive lineman Dior Gardner, safety Ethan Long, athlete Dante McClellan, and then 2026 Sean Alston and Cam Thomas, a couple of 2026s. But really, the 2024s who are coming are all guys who are committed, and then everyone else, this is more of a junior and sophomore event.
It's more of a junior day than anything. Ethan Long and Matty Augustine are teammates. They're both out of Connecticut. They both camped in June and earned their offers. So for them to be coming back again in July, I think is significant and something to watch.
All right. It's Just Me. Tim wants to know, what is the worst meal you had on a road trip? I know Kevin, while you're thinking about your answer, this was 2021, I think, and it was because we were on the road, so it wasn't 2020, but it was like not everything had opened back up again after COVID, and we were driving through the Pennsylvania Turnpike, which is never exactly, rich with options for dining. And we pulled off to one of the service areas, and it was one of these, next service area, 50 miles. So I was like, well, we better eat now. And we pulled off. And if you know Kevin, you know that he doesn't have many things that he really is just like a hard no on. Burger King, for whatever reason, is just an absolute no for him. And we walked into the service plaza, and there were 5 things on the sign. And closed. Burger King was open, closed. And he just walked in. I walked in first. I looked around, I recognized what was going to happen, and I just turned to watch his reaction, and it was everything I could have possibly dreamed. It was the most, I have never seen anyone emote disappointment, anger, sadness, and hunger at the same time in the way that he did in that moment. It was magnificent.
And then I was trailing, so I come in, I see that, and I immediately react, and I start laughing, and I'm looking for you guys. I see you. You're laughing, and then you point over, and Kevin's in the convenience store aisle, looking for some chips or something, because I will not eat a Whopper. So that was the best meal, frankly.
Yeah.
Because there was also a Popeyes there. He's like, I'll just get some Popeyes. Oh no, you won't.
No, sir.
I would say, you know what? I don't know if it was the worst. Most disappointing was Are You Hungry? At Rutgers, because they make all of these crazy sandwiches, and there's so much potential. It's like, this has cheesesteak, and you could throw some mozzarella sticks on it with some bacon, and you want some ham, we'll throw some pepperoni on it, we'll put a little sauce on it. And they do that, and you get it. It sounds amazing, sort of, but it just doesn't ever come together. And the cheesesteak, they didn't cut it up. It's just like a sheet,
Steak them.
Exactly.
But not cut.
Right, and so that was very disappointing.
I'm thinking back to, I just remember a bad Wendy's on the way back from, this was on the middle of a drive back from the Cotton Bowl, I think, which if you're driving back from Dallas, you're already setting yourself up for a bad everything. But we were driving back from Dallas after the Cotton Bowl, the one against USC in the 2017 season. We stopped at a Wendy's in Kentucky, and it was one of those times where you were convinced you were on a hidden camera show. where it was like no one could possibly be this bad at their job. It's not the food was whatever. It was like it was Wendy's food, is fine, but the service was so bad that I think it took like 15 minutes to get the order in, and they kept like disappearing and then coming back and asking questions that were like, that's not, why are you, it was like, do you want your, whatever, do you want
your ice cold?
Yeah, do you want your ice cold? Would you like your hamburger cooked? Like, yeah, sure, I guess that would be fine with me if you didn't poison me with bacteria, sure. That was just like one of those otherworldly, like, what is going on here?
Do you want 1 salmonellas or 2?
Let's see. Matthew basically says if Aaron Scott doesn't commit to Ohio State on Sunday, they better start firing people.
That's going to be bad.
It will. The vibes will not be good if Aaron Scott does not commit to Ohio State on Sunday. Yeah, I think right now there's no one is, put it this way, no one is really going out there and putting their neck out there that it's not going to be Ohio State.
Right.
So, I think until you see people start to do that, you have to sort of assume. Now, crazy stuff has happened last minute. Crazy stuff could happen again last minute.
Michigan is having a barbecue this weekend too. Is that?
I believe so. I believe they're having something.
Yeah. So, watch where Aaron Scott shows up this weekend.
Or doesn't.
But
or doesn't. Yeah.
What if he shows
I think
up,
Aaron's too smart to show up to any of these.
What if he shows up to the Michigan barbecue with Ohio State gloves
And an Oregon hat?
I was going to say Oregon bib.
Oh.
But
let's see. Info and anything new on Brandon Baker, the offensive tackle for 2024?
Nothing super new. I know like Ohio State is feeling like they're very much in that. That's another one, like kind of like Dylan Stewart, where I'll certainly acknowledge they're right in the top couple of schools, but I kind of have to see him leave the West Coast. Now, I will say he seems to have a pretty balanced list geographically, but Oregon's kind of been a big player there for a while, and man, it's one of those things where I guess with Dylan, it's kind of more of a kind of looking at the pieces and the clues and everything else. With Brandon, I think it's more of my PTSD with modern day than anything, but
because we were even saying
I think they're in it, and we'll see. There's been conflicting stuff on like, okay, is he going to actually decide this summer, or is he going to wait until like November? And so I think that's. Normally I have an opinion on like the longer it goes, the better or worse it is for Ohio State. I don't know that I have a strong opinion on that for Ohio State as far as timing. I don't know that it's one is better than the other. I just think they got to keep plugging away and kind of showing them the depth chart. Like, look, like you come in and you're competent, you're on the 2 deep.
Who is the more likely matter day guy, Baker or Jordan Davison in 2025?
I think it's Jordan Davison. The only thing that would make me say it's Baker is that Ohio State seems to have either 1 or 2 for like 5 stud running backs in 25, and it's like, as good as Davison is,
can't take them all.
If Bo Jackson and Torrey Blaylock both tried to commit, well, what would you do at that point? Wouldn't you have to take them if Jordan Davison says, well, I need 6 more months, or I need to do, I'm sure they would go to Jordan if they felt like they were closing in on 2 commitments and say, look, we need to know because you're our, maybe our top guy, but that's going to be the only interesting factor, I think, for Davison. Like, I'm fully convinced they lead for Davison. That's what people are telling me close to him, that Ohio State's in the driver's seat right now. But he may not, when he decides.
Well, and at some point, and it's early, obviously, but there's only so much room, and so many guys, so many running backs are interested. Like if they don't jump on, then it's kind of like they're being bypassed on purpose almost. Mm-hmm. Like once one guy jumps in, it's like, well, there's one spot left. If I want it, I better jump in now. And if you don't want it that much, then you're going to have to move on because it's going to somebody else.
Yeah. All right, it's just me. Tim wants to know your favorite picnic side dishes. I will jump in and throw a vote in for my wife's pasta salad, which is like a penne with peppers, cherry tomatoes. Sometimes she'll do it with like some chunked up cheese.
You've described a pasta salad. Good job.
And like a zesty Italian dressing. It is pretty good. Goes well with everything. It's one of those things where she'll say, I don't want to make that, and I said, all right, I'll just start making it. It's fine. It's good. It's very good, and I can always knock it. A good potato salad too. She does a good potato salad that I don't ever have to make, which is good because that looks like it's more of a pain in the butt than making the pasta salad. So pasta salad I can kind of make while I'm also running out to do the grill.
Do you do it like you're not going to do it right, and it's just like you're just trying to encourage her to fix it for you? Like when I'm putting the dishes away, I'll like crisscross the plates and stuff, and like my wife's like, "Get away," and then she'll do that. But for me, I would say a good potato salad with just the right amount of mustard. I don't like all of this fancy
mustard.
I said the right amount. Mustard potato salad.
No,
It sounds like Mark thinks the right amount is 0.
mustard-based potato salad. I was going to say potato salad, but not the way you're describing. A good loaded baked potato salad. It's got like a ranch mix with it. You got bacon bits in there. You got shredded cheddar cheese.
Is that an East Coast thing? Is this a Philly New York thing?
It's red, baby red potatoes. Yeah. It's like completely opposite of like the traditional like German potato salad.
Yeah, I don't see the Yoders making that, so I don't know what you're talking
exactly.
about.
We did have a Yoder in the comments if he wants to weigh in again. Wingman Ted wants to know who we think will end up as Northwestern's head coach. Tell me each of the reasons why it's going to be Ed Orgeron. Man, when I think cultural fit, I think dude from the Bayou in Evanston, Illinois.
I mean, it's right on the water. He'll
Brian Kelly can go to LSU. Why can't Ed Orgeron go to Northwestern?
The carpetbagger to be named later.
We'll teach these kids how to noodle them catfish. Yeah, that doesn't seem like a great cultural fit. I do feel like you could take anyone. I mean, Jim Leonard was. Someone brought up Jim Leonard that maybe Brett Bielema is looking to hire him or did hire him.
They hired him as an analyst.
Hired him as an analyst today. So he seems like someone who could be. He would maybe be a good fit. He had some kind of a health situation this year. It sounded like so he was going to maybe kind of take it easy this year, but potentially could be in line to take that job next year. He would be a great fit there, I think.
Is the job now less than it was before, though?
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you really want to be part of that right now? Is this something for an up-and-comer? And I think he's an established guy.
Yeah, but what is that job going to pay? And the answer is...
they may not have football in a couple of years the way they're talking.
At any other school, I would make the money argument. At Northwestern, I think they're just crazy enough to like lowball their next candidate and not break the bank.
We will not pay you more than our highest paid professor.
They're not serious about sports.
I think
they just aren't.
I think the bigger issue that I potentially see there, I mean, Pat Fitzgerald, not serious about sports or not, Pat Fitzgerald's getting a bunch of money. So I think the bigger concern for me is, boy, there sure are a lot of lawsuits out there floating around right now. So how concerned, how secure are they feeling financially, and what are they able? That would be my bigger concern more than anything else. But,
can the Ryan family handle all of the civil lawsuits that are going to come out?
Yeah, but the new stadium is going to be a little less shiny if they do. Who leads Ohio State in rushing yards this year from Daniel Henry? Yeah, that's the face I made too. I'm going to say we had the immediate response was Travion Henderson. That was, I'm sorry, scrolling back. Someone said that Travion Henderson immediately. I think Travion Henderson Mellow number 7 said Travion Henderson. I'm going to say Mayan Williams just to be a little different.
I think Henderson.
Who plays more? Tell me if...
Yes. Well, isn't that kind of the question?
Now, I will say, whenever those two have been healthy and everything is equal, Travion starts, and he gets more carries.
More of a home run hitter, too.
Yeah, and that's the other thing where, doing the rankings that I talked about offensive playmakers, I had him ahead of Mayan Williams because back in 2021, he was one of the best home run hitters in the nation. Now, maybe half of that came against Tulsa, but he did have some other big plays, the Minnesota game. So I think maybe the bang for your buck is Travion Henderson. However, if it's 3rd and 3 or 3rd and 2, who do I want with the ball? It's Mayan Williams.
All right. Well, you look up Brutus Buckeyes' Instagram post with the Oregon Duck and
Did
Austin
you see
from
that?
Young Mayo. I did not. Did you see it?
I did.
Okay. Well, Young Mayo wants to know your thoughts on the Instagram post from Brutus with the Oregon Duck and Autzen. I did not see this. What was?
They're in Autzen, and Brutus has their arms around each other's shoulders, and they're like looking at the scoreboard in the background. They're in the foreground in focus, and it's interesting. Just standing there like a couple of pals. I don't know what it means unless, as the Big Ten. I don't think that's how the Big Ten would announce it.
No.
It's probably some TV shoot.
I was going to say, this feels like a Capital One mascot commercial you're going to see in 4 months. That would be my bet, rather than a sly Big Ten conference expansion announcement. Ryan Dawes, question for Mr. Givler. Any pleasant, surprising, recruiting related you might be expecting while in Indianapolis?
While in Indianapolis?
I mean, you can stay as long as you want.
How long do I have to stay here?
Past Sunday, I believe.
I'm gonna have to stay here till at least Sunday evening, I think, at this point. I'm not expecting anything in the next 24 to 48 hours. Like I said earlier, if you're watching, I think Marquise Lightfoot can be flipped. I do feel good about Edric Houston. I do feel good about Aaron Scott. And this one's obviously maybe a little lower on the confidence level scale than those last two guys, but team to beat, I think, for KJ Bolden right now.
KJ Bolden is just it's almost like Buckeye fans are expecting that one to go poorly just because of everything. I think the Caleb Downs thing, even though it's going to be with different schools, but you feel like, we're really in this, and like not since Von Bell have you been able to pull this off, and that was 2013. And so this would be right up there. He's as highly ranked as any safety they've been after, and this is almost one where Buckeye fans don't speak it, don't say the name, let's try to just go about our business, and if it happens, it happens, and if it doesn't, we're going to be furious, and then we can talk about it.
And it's probably not going to be over on August 5th anyway. Yeah, I mean, it's not. Like Georgia and Alabama, aren't just going to say, "Oh, well, Ohio State got his commitment. I guess we're just going to not recruit him for the next 4 months." Like Kirby's, a 5-minute helicopter ride away. I'm sure the helicopter is going to be there. And,
do the chopper.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing is you shouldn't just get a 30-day membership to Buckeye Huddle. You should just buy the annual, because it's going to be interesting all the way through signing day and
Good
then
sell.
beyond. Yeah. Okay. Ty wants to know feelings about Aaron Scott. We talked about that earlier. Sue,
Feeling good.
Sue says chicken parm, homemade pasta, and everything. I don't know if that was a reference to the side dish, but man, that sounds good right now.
You just ate like 4 pieces of pizza.
Yeah, but and it was good. We had Pronta pizza. Yeah, just a little local indie pizza place. Very good. Had like a steak pizza and then like a chorizo and jalapenos
tomatoes.
And good. A couple good, a little different, but good. Boy, everyone has comments on the Wi-Fi. Yes.
Just let them know that they can listen to this.
Yes, we will have. If you are having trouble seeing and or hearing us, we're trying to. I think I'm recording this correctly. We'll have a separate thing put up later with the full audio and video. We'll have the audio, which should be pretty clean audio, up there in the podcast feeds as well. So we are controlling what we control, and there is stuff we can't control. So
should have paid the $15 for the Wi-Fi upgrade.
Yeah,
I'm titanium on Marriott. we are getting the enhanced. Okay.
Jeremiah Yoder, there we go. I knew there was a Yoder in the comments. Is there any Taco Bell in Indianapolis? I'm sure there must be, right? We haven't. Yes. We tend to not do that unless we're.
I've spent enough time with Kevin Noon in Indianapolis to know that yes, there is a Taco Bell in Indianapolis.
Yeah,
he probably knows the coordinates to every single one of them.
Yep, and good wishes out to our good buddy Sue, who is getting some medical tests done. We appreciate you and. Hope everything's going okay, and whenever you're not here, it's like Poochie. Where's Sue? Where's Sue? If we're doing a live show and Sue's not here, what's going on? So we're glad you're around. Hope you're feeling better. Mike Schaefer says Henderson needs a big year to become the next Zeke or Dobbins at the next level. Otherwise, he could be more like Mike Weber or Master Teague. I think I don't know that he needs a big year statistically. He feels already like he's a better prospect than like Master Teague felt like he was very much an is what he is kind of guy. Henderson feels like there's more high end to him. A big year this year. If he puts together the J.K. Dobbins 2019 season, yeah, he's going to do just fine for himself in the NFL level. But I feel like the ceiling is maybe there a little higher there than it was for a Weber or for a a Teague.
Yeah, and I think Zeke and J.K. Dobbins are two of the best Ohio State running backs of all time. So if you fall short of that, that's not your fault. Those guys are just really, really good.
All right, we have people asking a couple questions that we answered earlier. So you can go back and find the answers on Kingston Viliamuasa's flipping and Aaron Scott. We talked about a bunch of that earlier. We have from Fort Wayne Buckeye, your bet for the starting offensive line for Game 1 as of today. Who wants to jump on that one first?
Mark does. All right, I will go. I will go. It's going to be the same thing I said at the end of spring. It's going to be Josh Fryer at left tackle, Donovan Jackson left guard, Carson Hinsman at center, Matt Jones at right guard. Oh, I did not say this at the end of spring. And Josh Simmons at right tackle. I did say I was pressing it. I knew he was going to. I knew he was going to transfer, and then I knew he was going to head to Ohio State. So I think right now that's what I'm going with. But again, like we said an hour ago, ask again in 2 weeks because we'll see at least 2 practices. We'll talk to more people, and the best part about one of the better parts about camp is seeing when we get into a practice for even 30 minutes in like week 2 or after that first week, and because then you get to see who has moved, who is making progress, and who is maybe making regression, and you get to see that movement because it's going to be hard to see in 2 days. Especially the first 2 days, where people you won't be able to see necessarily any progress. Because even on the second day, if Victor Cutler is now at center, that might just be they want to see how things are going. That doesn't mean anybody has taken anybody's job after just 2 days or after just 1 day.
Yeah. Wingman Ted with a tremendous point here. I don't know why you guys think Edward Duran is a bad culture fit for Northwestern. Aren't they trying to change the culture in Evanston?
Well,
what better way than to completely change it? Fan boats on the 50. You know what? I take it all back. No notes. 10 out of 10.
No, I mean I think you just got the title of this show. I don't know, it's something to do with that.
Wouldn't Ed I could just see him just getting a boathouse.
Just stand on the lake.
Just stay on the lake by the facility.
I'm trying
and
to
just roll out of bed every morning and walk into the facility.
No, it would be like the wind boats where you could take it on the land as well.
I'm trying to picture Ed Orgeron talking to Northwestern boosters. The whole concept of Northwestern boosters is funny to me, but the idea of Ed Orgeron just kind of grunting and pointing at them.
People fainting.
Yeah.
I can't believe.
Yeah. What's the word on Dominic McKinley?
Oh, the defensive tackle out of Louisiana.
Yeah.
They've made a good push there. I don't see it happening. But I know, when he first kind of came on the radar, I kind of was like, "Oh, Louisiana kid,
why bother?
That's not happening." Kind of talked to people about that. They were very kind of thorough in that, and in not wanting to just bring him up for a free trip. So they kind of felt that they had that legitimate chance there, and so we'll see. I'm sure he's getting he's become a little more important lately. It's funny at the time. They were more optimistic than I thought they should have been on McKinley, but yet at the time they didn't think they were getting Justin Scott.
Yeah.
So that's changed, and then they thought they were getting Jaden Jackson, and they did. So that's changed.
It's like this is a really weird, unpredictable cycle in recruiting.
My guess would be the field that he stays somewhere closer to home, but they are going to keep chipping away.
What's it like for you covering this, where you have it nailed? And then 1 day later, everything is flipped.
Recruiting's kind of like that to an extent, but just this perfect storm of social media and the still newness of NIL, combined with a generation that has the shortest amount of patience, the least amount of patience, and the shortest attention span in the history of our world, has just created this point in time where we're just this is the inflection or the peak. This is peak volatility. This is if this was the stock market, it'd be the Great Depression. It's peak volatility.
The half-life. This is we're gonna tie this into Oppenheimer. The half-life here is very, very short. Everything is decaying and changing state very, very quickly in recruiting these days. Real quick, Peace Clan says, "Hey, I caught a live show. You sure did. We will. We're going to do our very best to do another live show. Maybe tomorrow after things. Maybe over the stadium. we're still trying to figure out the whole technical piece of this. We'll do our very best, and we are going to start wrapping up now as we get to the hour mark here, which is about 4 times as long as a typical morning show. But it's the unofficial start of the season, so we're a little excited, and we can tell you guys are excited too. Thank you very much to Sue for a very generous super chat. We may just take you up on that after we wrap this all up. We appreciate you always being here. Looking forward to having you around for the rest of the season and obviously far beyond that. So thank you to Sue. Thank you for everyone else. And Peace Clan says, thanks for everything, guys. Hello, everyone. Hello to you. One more question from Ty Kroner before we get going. Having plenty of time to look back, how would you guys grade Jim Knowles in year 1, and what's your prediction for year 2? I'll say...
God, that's its own show.
Year one was so much better than the year before that. It was so much better than 2021 in a lot of ways. And then it all kind of fell apart. It was like a John Cooper season in defense form,
yes,
where it was great for 11 games, and then the bottom fell out at some very inopportune moments. I think you saw enough improvement last year to be encouraged, and then with it being year 2, and how many times when we were talking to guys this spring, did we talk to them about the fact that, hey, this is the first time you've been at Ohio State that you've been playing in the same defense with the same coordinator 2 years in a row. You're not learning everything from scratch again. So this is really, I think there's a lot of opportunity for improvement there. And if they go from, if you're going to give last year's defense a C+, B-, something like that, if they can just get to a B+, they don't have to be an A+ defense. If they can just get the defense to a B+, and the offense regresses a little from an A to an A-, an A- offense and a B+ defense is getting you into the playoff, and then we saw how close they came last year to the national championship. I think a B+ defense is enough to potentially win a national championship this year.
The Cooper analogy was really good.
That's what I'm here for, to make good analogies and bum everyone out.
Let's start with the good. I think the culture of the defensive side of the ball is better. I would hear stories of people who were watching practice 2 years ago, and they would call me and be like, I was at practice today, and this player and this defensive coach, like players and coaches, like infight, just the infighting. The players didn't like playing the defense. Clearly the coaches weren't putting them in good spots. They played slow. They didn't know no one seemed to know what they were doing. So from a culture perspective and from a general knowledge of the defense perspective, I think they improved leaps and bounds. That being said, this is Ohio State, and falling apart in the biggest games 2 years in a row is going to be a real tough pill for a lot of people to swallow if that's what happens. So I'm cautiously optimistic because I think their defensive front is going to be dominant this year. I think people saw a glimpse of it early last year. I don't think people understand how good Michael Hall is. I think you'd have to go I think you might have to go back to Dan Wilkinson to find a better defensive tackle at Ohio State. And who knows? Maybe we know what Big Daddy did in the NFL was solid, but wasn't really a number. Michael Hall is just an unbelievable player, and they've got ends. I think the young defensive ends are going to surprise people. Jackson is. So my optimism is I'm there from an optimism standpoint, but you have to see it. I have to see it happen. Because you can talk about it, and you can look dominant against Indiana in the opener, and you can even look dominant against Notre Dame on the road with a team that doesn't have a ton of offensive skill. But until you are in the fourth quarter with Michigan and you're not giving up 70-yard runs, or you've got a big lead against Georgia, and all you have to do is not fall down and make them drive 75 yards in 9 plays, and you win that game instead of giving up the one explosive. Until that happens, there's just going to be that thing in the back of my mind of are they there yet? But the pieces are there to be really good on defense this year, and if they're not really good on defense this year, I think we're going to be having all sorts of interesting discussions in February.
Well, yeah, I think you have to. I have some concerns about safety just because. And Lathan Ransom was a Thorpe semifinalist last year, but he still had a couple of issues, and the falling down, turning and running and falling down against Arian Smith against Georgia. I think that was a kind of a flukish play. Talking about guys playing in the same defense for the second year in a row, this is going to be the first time in Josh Proctor's career. This is his 6th year at Ohio State. The first time he's going to be in the same defense 2 years in a row, which is crazy. Of course, he's playing a different position than he did last year when he started out as a strong safety. I think they will be they should be a top 10 defense with the system that has been proven. Now, I know it's been proven in the Big 12, so we know what that means. But I feel pretty good. Last year kind of reminds me of a college course. You do great on all of the midterms, all of the coursework and homework, and then the finals come up and the blue book shows up on your desk and you're like, I can't do essay exams.
I don't know what a pencil is.
Yeah, and it's like, here you're going to have to fill out this entire book with this one essay question, and you're like, I will completely bomb this because I can't explain all of this, but they did play faster last year than the year before. I think that is clear. They're going to play faster this year. We already saw that in spring. We heard all about it in spring with the secondary getting their hands on more balls. So there is every reason for this defense to be better rather than any kind of reason for them to be worse. What is the reason for them to be worse? There aren't any.
No, really not. Unless, they had reasonably good injury luck last year.
Mike Hall
was out, and then you lost Tommy Eichenberg a little bit, but
he doesn't need thumbs.
Well, and then I guess corners. I'm saying that, and I'm going through and going.
Except for issues. Except for all of the Jair Brown out there a couple nights.
Except for all of the position groups, they had good injury luck last year. So yeah.
Well, no, in comparison to the offense, they had great injury luck.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
But
Jordan Kapler with a great point on media days. Definitely, he says, "I'm bummed Steel Chambers isn't at media days." That dude is hilarious. He is, and Sue has nailed the actual answer for why he is totally unfiltered. That's probably why he's not there. No, let me correct you. He's totally unfiltered. That's definitely why he's not there. Steel Chambers is the guy who, everyone is very good about not cursing in front of the microphones, and he'll just kind of start talking and then just kind of go, oops, sorry, yeah. But he is the person who, whenever they bring out 5 guys, like I'm running to the table where Steel Chambers is because he's always an entertainer.
And we talk to him all the time. And the one last year was the discussion. We're talking to him, asking him questions, and he's like, "Can I ask you guys a question?" I'm like, "Sure, Steel, what's up?" If you had to take 4 animals into battle with you, what 4 animals would you take? And so then we did this for like the next 15 or 20 minutes. Like, what would you take? Well, I'd take a hippo. Oh, hippo, that's a good one. And then he was like, I would have an eagle that would like drop poisonous snake. It's like, oh, that's pretty good. While I'm riding on my elephant with a sword, I'm like, why did you have the sword? He's like, because I want a sword. That's Steel Chambers.
Yeah, so that is you will not get Steel Chambers on Wednesday Big Ten Media Days, but you'll get a whole bunch of other stuff. We're going to be talking to 7 coaches, 21 players, Big Ten commissioner, Big Ten director of officiating, Bill Carollo, who is always one of my low-key favorite interviews of this event every year. Ryan Day will be there. Jim Harbaugh will be there on Thursday, which should be a whole different kind of circus. So it should be a really fun couple days. We'll be streaming a whole bunch. We'll be streaming as much as we possibly can. Big Ten rules and internet connections willing. We will be streaming as much of it as we can. If not, we'll get it posted as soon as it's done. We'll give you our solemn promise to you 20 hours of Big Ten player and coach and live content interviews, or it's free, all at youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle. Make sure also you check out all of our podcasts. You can find them on wherever fine podcasts are sold. Just search Buckeye Huddle to find all of them. Tony and I do Buckeye Weekly. We do Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning. Mark and Kevin do Skull Session. Kevin does Big Meat Kickoff. You can find all those shows, all great content covering different facets of Ohio State football. Just search Buckeye Huddle on whatever podcast platform you like. And if you are watching on YouTube, we would appreciate it if you guys would hit that thumbs up button. That helps other folks find this show through, I don't know, some kind of magic. I'm not sure. But and make sure you also ring that bell so you get notified whenever we do live shows, whenever we put up new videos. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you get notified when we put up all those interviews and all that kind of stuff tomorrow. It should be a ton of great content. Football is back almost, kind of, sort of. It is the unofficial start of the 2023 football season. It is here in Indianapolis. We are here in Indianapolis. We can't wait to bring it to you. So thank you guys all for joining us. We really appreciate you taking the time to join us for this show, and we will talk to you guys tomorrow.